Welcome to Travel with Danny and MJ.
I'm Mary Jane.
And I'm Danny. We're traveling the world with just carry-ons and a backpack each. We're going to visit the Red Star Line Museum now. It's really about all the ships that took all the immigrants out of Europe and around the world. Great diaspora. So we're in the Red Star Museum. This is the oldest part of the museum. This is where the immigrants would be inspected, checked for medical conditions, and the decision would be made whether they would be allowed to leave or not. And here they have some advertising posters from Antwerp, that's to New York, to Philadelphia, to Boston, to Canada, all heading to America. Different options. They would sail, Philadelphia, Antwerp, New York, Liverpool, Hamburg, Rotterdam, so all these different ports of departure and destination. The Red Star Line was a partnership between Americans and Belgians based here in Antwerp, and it was the first sailing, and this ship is called the Vaderland. It was in 1873. The Red Star Line flourished from the late 1800s until the First World War, and until the 20s, when the U.S. started to impose immigration limits, and kind of led to the slow demise of the Red Star Line. Was finally liquidated in 1934, because of those restrictions, as well as the Great Depression. Here's some more of these posters. Antwerp, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Canada. So I think these posters will be spread out throughout the museum. There are different interactive components. So here I can choose to get the U.S. from Warsaw. So I'm going to pick. I want to go to Chicago, and then I just have to pick my different. So first I have to get from Warsaw to Berlin. Get information on, across the border. Undergo medical examination, be disinfected. If you do not have a Russian passport, then smugglers can help you get illegally across the border. And then from Berlin, I can choose to go to Hamburg or Antwerp. Let's try Hamburg. I can choose that route, or I can go a different way. If we go from Hamburg to Berlin, 3 ship sails to New York or Baltimore. So let's go there. And then I choose New York or Baltimore. Go to New York. We'll arrive. We'll go through more medical checks when we get to New York. And then from New York, Chicago, I'll take a train for a day and a half. Total trip is 14 days. Here's the journey. Berlin to Hamburg on a ship through the North Sea and the Channel, across the Atlantic, get to New York, and then another train to Chicago. This is what a ticket of passage might have looked like on one of these ships. This is a model of a ship called the Twin Lake Manitoba, SS Twin Lake Manitoba, and it is part of the Canadian Pacific Railways. A number of the railways sponsor these ships, serve them as extensions of the railways to get people across the sea and then continue their journeys on the trains in the U.S. Part of the exhibit are these little kiosks about different people who come from different different parts of the world and traveled through Antwerp on the Red Star Line. First one was from Ukraine, this one's from Belgium, another from Belgium. Kind of the different luggage and crates they had. And here's probably the most famous one around here is the story of Albert Einstein emigrating, from Germany, to escape Hitler and the Nazis. Belgium and Germany. So I had a big, large-scale painting of the port of Antwerp, the big river, and then below it here is that same painting, but interactively, where you can tap on different parts and you get information about this, in case the Rhine Quay, where the ships would moor. The Commissioner of Migration, so where the port would be managed, and so on. So very interesting, interactive exhibits. More pictures from back in those days when the immigration was in full bloom, along with some more of the posters for getting from Hamburg to Antwerp, and then from Antwerp to New York and Canada. We just passed through the part of the museum that talked about the intense medical examinations they had to go through, and now this is kind of about life on board the ships, whether you're in the steerage, which was not so pleasant, or perhaps you had more luxurious accommodations with lounging chairs and sailing kind of as more like a tourist. Here's a cross section of their flagship, the Belgenland. And we can see the upper decks are more luxurious in terms of the accommodations. And then if you go down and down, you can see like bunk beds and much more sparse quarters. It's pretty cool to see this kind of the ship cut in half and seeing everything, where all the luggage is at the bottom there. On this interact, you can see different aspects of how different people would travel. So if you clicked on selected third class, you see that like cut half section of the ship again, and you can see how they had these third class passengers had common bathrooms that they had to use. Close it. See that they ate basically below decks, in kind of narrow dark areas of the ship. Go back, we can see a first class cabin, pretty luxurious for the time. Sitting chairs, ventilation, in the upper decks. So, kind of more cool, interactive exhibits here. And then once they got to the U.S., they had to go through a very thorough inspection and examination and process at Ellis Island in New York for the most part. 12 million people went through Ellis Island from the middle of the 19th century until the middle of the 20th century. They had to go through financial, political, and medical inspections before they were allowed into more interactive displays on what would happen when you arrived in Ellis Island, what kind of things you would go through. This section is more stories of immigrants and their families, and particularly this one for the famous composer Irving Berlin, all about his granddaughter's exploration of him coming to the U.S. and his experience.